Hello, world. Welcome to another episode of the Devs Like Us podcast show. My name is Terrence, and today we're going to be talking about some hot developer news topics, including Elasticsearch. We have some news in the hacker space, and then also we're going to give some shout outs to some of our big time supporters in the community and some of the great work that they're doing, along with being able to discuss low code and no code and how it's affecting the developer community. So stay tuned. So our developer spotlight for this week is Tianna Lewis, and she is actually an iOS developer, and she has a great YouTube page where she actually goes through and shows you how she actually makes money through the indie space within iOS, and also she takes you through her coding journey and gives you some great tips on how to be an iOS developer in the space. So we have her YouTube channel up here, and you also can check it out within the show notes. And then we also have our comment spotlight too. So if you want to support us, especially on the podcast end, leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts. If you leave us a comment, we'll make sure to shout out your comment on the show. If it's a really great comment, give us 5 stars. And what that does is really help us spread the channel and helps get our resources and our information into the ears and eyes of others. So for this past week, Nell D. Perry, love it, said it's super informative and entertaining at the same time. That's a great comment. If anybody thinks they could top that, go ahead and give us 5 stars on the Apple Podcasts platform and leave a great comment. And then
shout out to Nell.
Yeah, shout out to
Thanks
Nell.
for showing us some love.
Yep. All right.
All right, guys, we're going to jump into this news. One good piece of news, or not so good piece of news that happened this week was there was a Florida water company that was hacked, and the person tried to raise the rates of the sodium hydroxide in the water supply. But luckily, there was a operator on site who was able to, observe it and revert it back to save everything. And, now feds are involved, trying to figure out who this hacker is and like what's the motive behind this types of situation, which to me this is really scary, but it also reminds me of like the, I don't know if you guys have seen Live Free or Die Hard, when they had that whole fire sale situation where they were just hacking like all different parts of the infrastructure and like shutting it down type of thing. So it's like, all right, life is imitating art. Let's get these things, under control and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, they say that this particular facility is not too far from where the Super Bowl was hosted, so they believe it could be some motive, but in regards to that. So who knows? They might have just, said, we don't want Tom Brady to win.
That's a good point, Clarence. Are you even a Patriots fan now that Tom Brady left?
Yes, I'm a Patriots fan, but I just admire Tom Brady. So, but I didn't jump on the bandwagon. I just, I felt the congrats, and then that was it. Back to business.
Right.
You mean to tell me you weren't one of those people that are like, honey, we're moving to Florida?
No, not at all.
Right. So, JB, for this one, was there any insights or tips on how they were able to detect it? Did they detect it in enough, I guess?
Yeah, so now that the feds are involved, they like went back to, try and figure out what's going on. They found that it was because the water company was using TeamViewer, which there's a bug within it, I believe. And so, yeah, it was pretty bad. Where was it at? They were running remote control software, TeamViewer, and the person latched onto that, which they had stopped using TeamViewer. I think it was like a couple months or a month or so before this happened, but they forgot to delete it. So it's one of those weird situations where it's like we were almost at that point of us being secure, but not quite. And also the fact that this system was supposed to be on a completely separate, isolated network from, the outside network. And so they're trying to figure out like why was this a thing? Yeah, so it's still under investigation and things. So more news to come.
Any word of advice for the developers out there, JB?
Make sure you actually look into the security of the systems that you're using, like the software and things like that. Just because you think that you're some small time, person or whatever, no one's going to hack me. People say that every day, and people get hacked every day. And so, make sure that you're doing your due diligence to make sure your home security is updated and things like that. You're following the latest like NIST standards to keep yourself safe. Yeah.
I think for me, it's a reminder that, and I guess kind of to piggyback off what JB said is that, just because you might not be in the spotlight doesn't mean that, you still don't have something that's valuable to, someone on the outside. And I mean, it just goes to show like, you think about the water plant, and we all, for pretty much for where we all, live, we all are basically, dependent on something like that. And so it's like, it kind of puts you in a mindset that like, not only am I afraid of my Alexa hearing what I'm saying, but I also got to worry about some hacker, poisoning my water. And I don't know, it's just a reminder to, again, like JB said, to do your best to tie in as much security as you can, because you just don't know you just don't know what people are looking for in your systems.
Mm-hmm.
I guess no security through obscurity, as they like to say. I guess so. Yep.
Yes.
So we definitely will keep up to date with that one. So next we have AWS is actually forking Elasticsearch. So this is a big deal within the open source space. So one thing that's really big within open source, and I think developers, we kind of like hover over a little bit when we're in the GitHub repo. When we're setting up that repo, we kind of just pick the default or whatever. If there's not a default, what's the first one? Let's pick the licensing. But the licensing has like a big impact on how different organizations or people or entities can interact with the code and what they can do and how they can distribute that, right? So one of the big things here within this story is that Elastic, the company, they're well known for their open source product, Elasticsearch. So normally beforehand, they really had the what I would call was a popular model within the open source place where the code was open source, but they really made a lot of money through consulting and through having their managed platform. And so the big thing here is that AWS had a popular offering that utilized or was built on top of Elastic within one of their cloud services offerings. And so now they're no longer able to upgrade, I guess, based off of the main repo through Elastic because they changed their licensing. And so basically AWS said, we still want this to be open source, so we're going to fork it and then just build a whole community around this fork project. So AWS and also another company, actually there were several other companies that also said they're going to fork it as well, that were heavily popular within the Elastic space.
Logs.io.
Yep, Logs.io. So they do a lot of the logging within that stack as well. So what thoughts, JB, Clarence? Is this good? Is this bad?
Well, for me, it's just one of those things where it's not that often that you hear a company go from open source to like, I'm going to lock everything down because they're taking my, revenue stream. Well, if that's the case of Amazon, built on top of your stuff, and a lot of people are flocking to Amazon. Well, you locking down your stuff is like, well, everything before you locked it down was open source, so we can just, have a fork off your last, version of the open source and build our own and continue on, especially since Amazon has been using this for as long as they have. And so they've, the developers have had to learn the ins and outs of Elasticsearch. So for them, it's like, well, okay, we're just gonna pick up where you guys left off, and all right. And so that's really interesting to me, but also open source for the win, because there's plenty of times where I'm like, if I could only like see in the background to fix this thing that I know is there, it'd be great. Whereas if it's not open source, you can't do that. And so with open source, it's like, oh yeah, this is the part that I need to, modify to get this to work for me. So yeah.
Right. And this is definitely a case study. If you're a developer and you haven't paid attention to the licensing space, this is big, because anything that Elastic has completed under that previous license is bound to that license for life. That version, that release is bounded to that license. And so it's amazing to me. Like, it really shows just the power of the legal end of the open source area. So I'm definitely gonna be monitoring this. I'm curious to see. The good thing about it is, I mean, AWS is a big, large player, and as long as they have interest in it, they're gonna continue to maintain it. The scary thing is, as soon as they lose interest, it's like, and that's with any open source project. It's always it depends on the interest that's built around it. Me personally, I would like for it not to have like 3 or 4 different offerings of the product, but hey, I think it's better for it to live on in some way than to not live on at all. And if anyone's not familiar with Elasticsearch is the technology that's built behind. If you ever use Yelp, the mapping feature there, they have a lot of mapping areas where you can put in geotags and then have that easily mapped. So it's a pretty awesome piece of software if you ever have the chance or opportunity to play around with it. So Clarence, what do you think? What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think one important thing to come from this is when you're developing any type of open source software, that really keep in mind, where do you see your project going? I think I wonder if this is something that could have been prevented as like developing kind of a prototype that you do offer.
Where are you going? Where are you going? Think it out. Go ahead, Clay.
I know as developers, sometimes we really don't know the potential. I mean, of course, you could be like, I'm the greatest and everything.
No, Clarence, you said it right. You don't know the potential. Sometimes you're just playing around. Look at Facebook.
Yeah.
You're just playing around. Sometimes they're just playing around. You don't know what you're like. They don't take it serious up front. So the quicker you pivot, the better. I'm sorry, Clarence, you're on fire. You don't know what you're building.
No, yeah, but I definitely think that it's super important. And I know this should be a learning experience for all of us. Is that anything that you do develop, again, keep in mind, where do you plan on it going? And I mean, because to me, when I read it, it kind of felt like you're at the restaurant and you see your teammates over across the way that you helped them finish this project, and the boss is saying, well, here you can have the steak, but everybody else is like, you can get the Salisbury steak because you only gave us so much. And it's like, well, I wanted the steak too, and I did all of this.
It's like, but you didn't do what Mike did, so.
Yeah, so it's like, I want my piece of the cake too. If you're getting it, why can't I have it? So again, I think it's definitely a learning experience, and just again, keep in mind and be mindful that when we are doing things, even if it's for fun, just think about a roadmap of where do you plan it to go. And sometimes things kind of take off pretty fast, and at first you're thinking like, oh, this is great exposure, and this is just a big name that I probably wouldn't get any other way. But again, just from a business standpoint, just kind of consider where do you plan to go with, what you've done or what you've developed.
Great advice, Clarence. Great advice. All right. And go ahead, Clarence. Go ahead.
I was just going to say
and another thing.
I was just going to say the greatest segue, talk about Get the Bag. Our last news point is Twitter considers subscription fee for TweetDeck. It's like, hey.
I was holding you back from that great transition.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Claire. Sorry. All right, focus.
You're trying to get me for a last point, and I didn't have one. I was just trying to segue.
That man transition was amazing.
So it says
You know
Twitter
he likes his segues.
So it says Twitter is building a subscription product as a way to ease dependence on advertising. You know, advertising is big, you know, in a lot of the platforms that we use, and I think to me it feels like it's they've learned from others where it's just like, you know, if you get your users to pay a subscription to avoid advertising, excuse me, you know, why not? And I think other people have become successful with it because we all know those some people are like, I'm not going to sit here and watch ads. Like get rid of all of them. So what are y'all thoughts?
For me, this is it's interesting just because of the fact that this is a social media like platform, and it's like, yeah, you know, for all this time we've been working out here for free, you know, just giving them everything we got for free. And now it's like, all right, guys, you know, we haven't seen any major jumps in our, you know, our income. So what we're going to do is like, you know what? We're going to make them pay for it. It's
true.
It's like I feel about this kind of how I feel about Elastic shutting down their open source licensing. And just the fact that this has been talked about for years, and you know they've like put out surveys to people, you know, asked them about it, and it's like, hey, would you pay for this service that you're already using if we shut it down and made you pay for it? Or like what other features would you like to be added if that's the case? And so just also, it's not just TweetDeck. They're also thinking about, well, what about tipping? Which makes sense since since, you know, you have the age of Patreon and all that stuff. And people are actively paying, you know, to watch other people's feeds and like the behind the scenes feeds of like people's podcasts, like, you know, us. And so just, I guess they're like, well, that seems like a lucrative business. So we'll have people host live events on Twitter, and then we can just take, you know, a little off the top of what that person is making, type of thing. Which I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I'm not too sold on it. Yeah.
What you think, T-Man?
So confession time. So
here we go.
So I actually thought I didn't even. So I read the other articles. I didn't read this one because I was like, oh, I already knew about this article, and it was completely off. I thought this was about them adjusting the rates of their API. You probably all heard that in the intro. I was like, you probably like, what is he talking about? I thought this one was in regards to they were adjusting like the free limit to the amount of requests that the other third-party applications can make to the application. So this is another end of I guess what they're trying to do from a financial standpoint. But I think, I mean, it doesn't hurt. I mean, everyone has to evolve. But of course, they probably have their business folks that are probably doing the analysis of stuff and weighing pros and cons for it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I always tell developers and stuff that we can't just develop features just to be developing them, and that there's a business and there's a cost model behind everything, and that everything has to add value. So they obviously believe that this might have some value. So who am I to judge?
So there's one thing I will point out with this that I thought was pretty interesting. Another feature that they were thinking about is personalizing profiles, like changing your color and all this stuff. And I immediately thought of MySpace.
I was gonna say
like, MySpace.
You know what? If the younger generations are actually on these platforms, they didn't live through the age of MySpace. And I remember seeing like some years ago where someone like actually tweeted like, I don't understand why Twitter won't just let us, you know, play music on our profiles. And I'm just like,
oh, it's so horrible.
There's people,
it's like
it's
against best practices.
Like, yeah.
I remember just being in the library and then all of a sudden that music just plays. Like you open a page.
Where did this come from?
it doesn't start on silent. It just starts blasting music.
Right. Like, I'm not turning the autoplay feature off on my page.
Exactly.
Are
And
they
I
gonna
even
make it
know.
so that you can set up who's your favorite tweeter and make them number one on your list?
I mean, they might. They might, especially with the stories. You just start pinning people to the top of your page. Like, these are my favorites.
The top
And it's
10.
just like, okay, I like them. Okay, I like them. And it's like, dude, really? We're going back to poor Tom. Poor
Yeah.
Tom. He's lost all
MySpace. A
his
lot of
friends.
people said they got into UI, UX, and even just general coding because of MySpace. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Now,
it was just basic web development. Like, take this
yeah,
snippet of code that you found and put it in this block. Now make a couple edits to what you
yeah.
want to say. Yeah.
Shout out to everybody's friend Tom.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Which
Uh,
this I feel like is a good, like
Segue.
Clarence says, segue
That was a segue.
into
I
our
heard you drop
topic
Clarence,
it.
for today.
JB trying to get her points.
I heard
So today's topic is low code, no code. And this is very interesting to me, but Terrence, I'm gonna let you explain it to the peoples.
All right. So one of the reasons why we picked this topic is a lot of developers who have spent, I guess, a lot of time learning and perfecting their craft. Some on one end feel a little threatened, and then they kind of feel as though, hey, we're giving the power over to non-developers to essentially do what we've been working so hard to be able to do. And then on the other end, there's folks who feel as though, hey, if I don't have to spend time doing X, Y, and Z, then great, I can work on other problems and solutions. So basically, low code, just for a simple high level definition, low code is just any product or service or offering that you could use to just basically limits the amount of code that the developer has to write. And then no code is basically is what you see is what you get. Basically, you drag and drop, and code is generated in the background, and you have a solution that works for you. So basically, that's the difference between low code and no code at a high level. And so now we're seeing these tools have really started to evolve, and there's a number of offerings where people are creating great mobile applications. They're creating great websites. They're creating, even some people are even creating full out APIs and services with these offerings. So, team, Cass, what do y'all feel? How you? I guess what are your overall feelings, high level, before we kind of dive in deeper into the topic?
So high level, first, this is really cool. I also find it interesting that a lot of people are like, well, what about the developers? What are we going to do now? And it's like, there's still plenty left to do.
Go
And
master the
also,
cloud.
right, this field is way too big for you to be worried about this part of it. And just also, like, there's a lot of people who, like, for years have wanted to get into this field, and it's been like, well, I don't understand the tech speak that comes along with it. It's like, I just want to make my website look nice. There's plenty of people that ask me, hey, do you know how to make a website? And I'm like, I mean, I can do something, but I'm not that great. Whereas now it's like, oh, I can just do a bunch of drag and drop and put this piece here, put that piece there, and it just works. All right, sign me up, type of thing. And so, yeah, I think I'm very interested to see how this looks later down the road. Clarence.
No code, low code. So I kind of have mixed feelings. It's one of those things that I felt like should have been a big thing a long time ago. I think, especially for my experience, going to different companies, it was a lot of different projects that I worked on where it was so customized, and it was just, to me, I'm not going to shame anybody, but I just didn't feel like it was good business practice, and it's just because if you make your business conform to more, I guess, community standards, I feel like low code, no code is perfect because it just fits in with your normal workflow, and it isn't you don't have to think about having to take time to have a dedicated person sit with the developer, tell them what they want, And I mean, I guess like that's the driving force for agile, where you're building constantly and you're at least listening and testing everything out. But when you see no code, low code, it's just like, oh yeah, this is what I needed. This fits with what we already have. Click, boom, done. And you've saved time, you save money. Like I don't know. I love the option. I think that a lot of, especially uh maybe up and coming companies, I think you should just go ahead and go that route. Save yourself
Oh
some
yeah,
time and
definitely.
some money, and go with that.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board with like the new companies, just because there's been a lot of books that I've read about when it comes to starting out a new business, figure out what your minimum valuable product is, and put it out there, test it out with your users and things, and that's exactly what this can help you do. Quickly figure out, okay, how do I want this to look? What button should go where? What makes sense for me may not make sense to the user. So let me quickly get something out there. Let a couple people that's in my user space look at it, get it in their hands quickly. Do you like it? What do you like? What don't you like? All right, let me go back, make a couple changes. Now let me bring it back to you, see how it is, because usually this takes like weeks, months, sometimes years to make those really good changes for people. And, you know, by that time, you could possibly lose that customer that had, a certain mindset about something. Their mind has completely changed, and, what you had before, they like now, and vice versa. So now you're just running in circles. And instead of just like, all right, let me make this quick change, I'll see you in like next week, and now we can talk about the changes that I made. So yeah.
So for me, I think for me the biggest thing I like from it is because I mean, there's so many other issues or problems that developers need to solve. We're still A lot of developers are still like coming to terms with the fact that uh, we really are taking on a lot of system admin roles with the cloud space, where we're learning how to automate everything and have all these cloud services and have our code run in an efficient manner within the cloud space. That I think there's a lot of expertise and skills that we can focus our time on there. And then there are other custom like developer things, like JB said, like post like there are some items that if low code or no code can get it there, like how many hours are we saving that we're moving on to something else that those offerings or solutions don't can't reach. I do think that for folks that are kind of like feel upset, like, hey, I've learned all these skills, and now people are just over here dragging and dropping. Um, it's more than that. There's so much more that like you still as a developer are valued for, and there are things like the what built that was code. So like
Yeah, that's what I
there's
was gonna
still
say.
right.
These people are upset about it, but there's a person that was behind that code that creates code for
Right.
Exactly.
this drag and drop service. That code needs to be maintained. There's new packages coming out on a daily, and so there still needs to be that person in the background to connect the dots to make it all just all right. I want this mailer to go with this website, and yeah, I'm just going to snap them together and it's just going to work. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
how it looks to the user, but in the background there's a lot going on. And
Right.
so getting people to understand that you're not going to lose your job. Your job just may look a little different. um
Right.
and so yeah.
And what I really love about this too is not only if there's someone who has the business aspect or within your company, or they have like an analyst aspect, let them plug and play, and that's
Yeah.
one less ticket that might not make it to your team's queue,
Hmm.
and you're able to just focus on other things, that the other ticks that are in there. Were there
And
any
they're
other
already
big?
using it, like
Yeah.
you were saying, like let that analyst or that staff person use it, because a lot of times in a business you're building something for another group within the business to use. And so if this person already knows what they like, what they don't like, what looks and feels great, what analytics they want to see, let them be the person who's putting it together, because
Right.
we've all seen that that little, I think it was like a 6-part diagram where it was like what the customer said they wanted, what I understood, and like it just never comes together. Like I think there was a point where like a swing set was going through a tree or something like that.
Oh, I know
Oh,
exactly
Oh
what
and
you're
then
yeah,
talking
I think at
about.
the end they wanted like a roller coaster or something like that. And it's just
yeah.
like, yeah,
Exactly.
there's always that disconnect. Now, granted, sometimes you have that technical person that is able to, kind of switch their hats and gain that understanding. But a lot of times it still takes quite a few iterations to make it to that point. And this kind of eliminates that for you. Um, Now, on the other hand, when you're dragging and dropping and snapping all these different applications together, these people also have to think about the fact that the the staff person or the analyst that's doing all that, they don't really have a real true understanding of how this other stuff works. And so there's a lot of times where they can build in their own threats just because of the fact that, yeah, I'm just going to, do this and put this with that database because that database is fine. It has, the information I want. Yeah, that database may have the information you want, but it also has other information that should never make it out into the public eye. And so um, you have to find that balance of what this person can do and what they should never ever touch. And so, like, your developers won't lose their jobs because it's a developer that usually, went through like the database and figured out what information, would be pulled from the database and what wouldn't. And so I feel like this is kind of one of those pair coding type of situations where it's like, developer sitting there is like, hey, I'll take care of this part. You just make it look nice, and I'll do background stuff. Don't touch any of that. So yeah, this
Yeah.
is really cool and interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other big pros? I know another one, I guess now I'm thinking off the top of my head, like building those internal tools as a developer. Like, you know how you build that tool that's just for like the development team? If you
Mm.
have the right framework, plug and play is nice to be able to create some of these services that you just need for internal test or just for like
Oh yeah.
something that a tool that the developers only use. That can save a lot of time. And because at the end of the day, that's not direct value to the customer. It kind of gets there indirectly,
Hmm.
but it's still very powerful. So
One
cons.
other,
I had
well, I'll do one other
Uh,
pro first, which is no more dealing with like the CSS problems of like, figuring out your padding and where this box is supposed to lay on a web
I will find a
page.
way to mess that up, JB.
I like I remember when I first like learned how to like do HTML coding and putting in the CSS and all that stuff. And I was just like, dude, what the heck? Like I told it that I wanted my box, left justified,
that
but now it's
is
under
yeah.
that other box and I just don't
That
get why it's
is
not working. And this takes that problem out of it because you're legit just saying, all right, I want this box to say this and I want it on the left side of the page and we're just going to leave it at that. And so that is one really good pro, just because of the fact that even for the people who have like, a light understanding of HTML and CSS and all that stuff, but that just gets you every now and again, that headache is gone. So yeah.
So I had two pros before we move to the cons. So one thing I know, I guess one thing I heard mentioned was as far as like having anybody that from the business side that might already have specialty as far as what they're doing. One thing I noticed and experienced a long time ago was that business people understood Access and Excel. And then when you try to add a code pieces, or at least from a developer standpoint of trying to develop a database.
I'm sorry. That's what I was trying to say, but I never said it. Go ahead, Clarence.
But from a developer standpoint, you got to figure out, the how to set the database up, how the data gets, formatted the way that they had it. I mean, there are people who, really take, Excel and come up with some crazy formulas, process some crazy numbers, and, they know that. And so you think from a no code, low code, if they have something that they could kind of just drag and drop from what they already have done, you know, hey, you've already taken out the middleman, like JB said, weeks and weeks of trying to figure out a change or any kind of issues, and these people know their processes, they know their data, so why not give them that chance? And then my last pro is just to think that we as developers, I mean, it's cool that we get a chance to do a lot of cool stuff, but we do put companies in a bad spot if we were to leave. So if you kind of pick up a standardized process, as far as like having something that a lot of people can kind of pick up and be able to do without having to, hire somebody specialized, you save businesses a lot.
True. Very true.
Brought that heat.
He coming out here with real life. Like, look, let's let the macro expert do the macro stuff. They've had this spreadsheet for 6 years. They got it looking nice.
I've been there. Sure. I've been there, so I'm really passionate about this. And I know, like you said, most people are afraid of it, but to me, I just think that, like, if you think from a business standpoint, even if I own my own business, I'm a developer, so I know how developers can be and how they respond to things. And when you get to, it can get really messy. So from a business standpoint, why not try to, formalize a standard? Standards is big,
Yeah, I can totally see that. And shout out to all the folks that can use Excel and come up with all those pretty graphs and then all the functions. I'm like, they're coding as well.
Yes. It's like, you want me to make a pivot table?
I was there today.
Exactly.
Like, you put all the basics in there. I just put the data. We'll call it a day.
Exactly. So cons. Anyone have any cons for low code, no code?
So one con I see is, like a lot of people are like, yeah, we can take this pre-existing, setup that we have in our business, and then we're going to go to this low code, no code thing. And there has to be a pipeline that happens between those two. And, the process of building out that and having your developers understand that, I'd see that as being a potential con that will later turn into a pro, because once it's done, it's done. But it's just the initial process of doing that switch, or having companies say, "All right, guys, I heard about this great thing. We're going completely no code," and it's like, what about all the stuff we've already done? Doing that cost benefit analysis. And all that.
Hey, bangers tonight.
Cost benefit analysis.
Straight bangers.
College did something good for me.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, just having the know how to do that cost benefit analysis to say what makes sense for us to make as changes for the overall business architecture is going to be a interesting situation.
I think JB covered everything that I had as a con. I do believe that, just I guess I don't even know if I'm expanding or repeating, but, if it doesn't fit your current business model, again, kind of phase it in, try to see where there is room to use, low code, no code methods. But, don't, I've seen it too, where it's just like, it's the shiny new toy and it's just like, make it fit. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. And, that does cause problems for the business as a whole, because, now everybody's like freaking out. They don't know what's going on. They're trying to make things fit, make things work. And I mean, just kind of evaluate your processes and your business model and see if it actually does fit. And who knows, it might not be one of those things that it's a full solution for everything, but maybe there are pieces that you can do it with.
You all summed it up pretty well. My only con is really are centered around the offerings. A lot of these, just picking the best solution. There are a lot of folks on, and we'll probably link some of the reviews within the show notes. We will link some of the reviews in the show notes of some of the different products. But some of the cons with some of them, you might not necessarily own the code, but then there are some folks where you can actually get the code and run it on your own, so you don't have to. You're not necessarily locked into that offering.
Reliant.
So, yeah. So these services, these companies that are building these low code, no code offerings, they're thinking about all of the cons and they're fitting them to the needs of the customers for sure. In my opinion, for my summary within the whole topic is just that developers should not necessarily worry. This should be a good thing,
Your
because
job
as
is
most of
fine.
you all know, within the development space, you're doing so much, and there's still going to be a need for you. There's still going to be a ton of other things that you would need to work on. And to be honest, we're all using at least no code to some extent. A lot of these frameworks, Django in particular, in my opinion, when you're starting and they're already setting up your basically your homepage and your dashboard for you, you didn't code that out. You installed Django, you ran it, and it gave you all that out of the box. So to me, that is low code, right? And from the no code standpoint, it's really almost like the same methodology from a just gets you a lot closer to your finished product from the jump than
Yeah.
even low code does. So I think it's a great thing. There's so many other technologies and or other pain points within making sure that we're able to get out great services and software that I'm able to focus on. And I would leverage all these tools if possible, if the business and the use case is right, because to be honest, our time is valuable. I don't know about you all, but my time is not cheap. So if I can
Cha-ching,
it's
cha-ching.
not cheap, right? So utilize, like, so if I can uh, leverage these tools to where I could better maximize my time and my efficiency, my company's gonna like that,
Hmm.
and I mean, I'm gonna like that too. I'm getting more things done.
Right.
And it
That's,
increases your promotability. But one thing I was going to say is, some episodes back, we talked about, the DevOps cycle and how there was a lot of times where developers were getting into the ops side of things. And, ops and IT is like, hey, is our job on the line? And, in that episode, we talked about how, no, we just need to, clearly define those lines between the developer and the ops group. Well, for me, is the same thing. We're just moving, to another section of the process where it's like developers are like, well, is my job on the line? No, you have your, specialized place. This is just, we want to give you time to do the stuff that, work on the features that really matter,
mm-hmm.
type of thing. And so it's just that continuous cycle of, well, is my job on the line? It's like, no, everybody's fine. Just, continue, with regular business type of thing. So yeah.
I think T-Man, you mentioned on too, or at least you hinted on it, where it's like if you could make changes, don't customize no code solutions because you're just going back to the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, and no, yeah, from the when we were talking about the CSS stuff, yeah, with color schemes and all that, like I love grabbing a template, and my goal is like I grab the template that already fits what I need. So for me, I mean, I like running services, I like scaling services, but when it comes to design, like no,
Mm,
you do not want me
yeah, that's true.
like when I was first like when we would play with like HTML, CSS in high school, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool, but like I'm not like I love the bootstrap themes. Like let me just pull that. I'm not changing anything. The
Right.
more I change, the worse it looks from a design perspective.
I mean, just
Like
think
I can
about how
do
those MySpace pages looked back in the day with the words falling from the
right.
top to the
Oh
bottom,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it was also spinning, and it's just like
You
yeah,
had
way
words.
too much going on.
I
yeah.
had dollar
Early
signs.
I've
2000s was
seen.
something crazy
Oh,
on the
okay,
internet.
Frank.
You know.
I had
So
dollar
glad my
signs
space.
just raining down.
Yeah.
So so glad you
Yeah,
don't
but to be
use
honest, to
my
me,
space
this is that
anymore.
same thing. Like you leverage it, like 'cause so there's so many different angles and specialties and stuff. So I just say, to me, it's a good thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
All right. Any other closing remarks for everyone?
I'm good.
JB,
I'm good on this one.
Clarence.
Only thing I would add is if anybody's out there that specializes or working in projects that use low code or no code, comment down below and let us know, how's it going for you, and it's good if you're a hybrid, because now we can kind of see, from both standpoints, if you like doing more customized stuff or if you, you prefer the low code, no code method.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a great point, Clarence. Great call to action there. Well, you know what it is. So this is the end of our episode on low code, no code. As we stated earlier in the episode, leave us a comment on YouTube. If you're on one of our podcast listeners, head over on to Apple Podcasts. Leave us a five stars. Leave us a nice comment. You might get a shout out. We really appreciate that, and that only helps boost those who are able to listen to us. So that would be a great way to support. Hopefully you're able to leave a thumbs up for this video and subscribe and ring that bell. All right.
Ring the bell.
I'm Terrence.
I'm Clarence.
JB.
All right. That's a wrap.